So we've all seen Steepholm Island sitting out on the edge of the bay, but a lot of people just don't know what it's all about or what's out there. Can they visit? What will we see? So let me take you on a guided tour. We're approaching Steepholm and we can see the island looming up in front of us, and we've suddenly realised that it is very, very big. As you get nearer to it, you will see that there is a large pebble beach, a boathouse and buildings perched on the cliffs. And the island has a very long and fascinating history. I mean, it's been around for millions of years, but we won't go back that far. Many people have left their mark on it, but since 1976, it has been owned and maintained by the Kenneth Allsop Memorial Trust, which is a charitable trust, which was set up as a living memorial to the broadcaster Kenneth Allsop, who was very keen on conservation, wildlife, and particularly birds. So that was purchased, he died in 1973, so the island was purchased in his memory. And carefully worded documentation will ensure that the island can only ever be used as a nature reserve and a bird sanctuary. So as we land on the island, we've just whizzed across from Weston in a 12-metre rib, going like a bat out of hell, having a really wonderful time, seeing the island get bigger and bigger in front of us. And we land on the beach. This is the east beach, which faces Weston, and you can see it quite clearly some days when the weather is really clear. It is the only safe place to land on the island, but it takes a skilled boatman to actually achieve that. So our trips are dependent upon the weather, but not whether it's going to be sunny or wet, it's whether the wind is in the right direction and how hard it's blowing. So as long as we receive the right forecast on the evening before, then the trip can go ahead. If we don't, then it's called off, because the trust cannot take risks and risk having people being left on the island overnight or even longer, as I know some people have. Not on my patch. So you have a look around at the area of the beach, and the massive tower rock is looming over you, as is the entire island. And it can be quite daunting. You might, as you're getting off the boat, hear the high-pitched cry of a peregrine falcon. They nest on the island each year, and they raise their young, and they create havoc out there. But enough of that for now. Got our own kind of havoc here. As we walk up a zigzag path, there's a path that goes up from the landing quay, and it zigzags, 3 zigs and zags, up the side of the cliff. You follow that up, and the first turn you take is into a sycamore wood. Now, sycamore, not everybody's favourite. It's the only tree that grows on the island, so it does give quite a bit of shade and shelter, but the road up, the path up, is quite steep. But there are plenty of places where you can stop and have a breather, get your breath back whilst admiring the view. Plenty of views all the way around, both back to Weston, up channel as far as the 7 Bridges. And on a clear day, you can see Glastonbury Tor, and way, way down the coast. Yes. As you go up through the sycamore wood, you come to the top of the zigzag path and turn to go around the island on a perimeter path. And the first building you will come across is a massive World War II gun battery. It was built in 1941 to house 2 6-inch naval guns. Unfortunately, they're not there anymore. I think the army wanted them back, or probably the Navy. So they were removed at the end of the war. You can feel free to have a ramble around it, enjoy the views, have a look at the ammunition lockers down beneath the gun platform. They are now nesting sites for the gulls. The savvy ones coop up inside of the cupboards and stay nice and dry, keep their young nice and warm. So it's a favoured spot for them. It's also a great spot to enjoy your picnic. It's actually called Garden Battery, and it's named after a garden that was on that site more than 800 years ago, when a priory was established by monks on the island, and they were keen gardeners. They had a very poor diet, you see, because they mainly lived on limpets, which isn't really very good for you. So I think we've got a photo of some of the flora and fauna that we would see on Steepholm. And depending on when you visit, you'll see a variety of unusual and often rare plants along the paths, many of which were brought by the Romans, mostly for their medicinal properties, but obviously they were used in cooking and all sorts of other uses. The Romans found uses for everything. These include henbane, which is a toxic plant, but even so, apparently was used to cure toothache and seasickness. You know, whether it just killed you so you got over it anyway, I don't know. One of my favourite ones is pretty blue borage, which has many uses. But most of us will recall it as being the traditional garnish for a Pim's cocktail. Not available on Steepholm, I'm afraid. We have great mullein, which grows to over 6 feet high. And if you visit in April, you might be fortunate enough to catch the flowering of the wild Mediterranean peony, definitely brought here by the Romans. And Steepholm is the only place in the UK where this lovely plant is found growing naturally. But its flowering is over a matter of days, so 24 hours either side and you've missed it. But hopefully, anybody interested in visiting Steepholm may well get to see it. So we continue around the perimeter path and we come to the Victorian barracks. Steepholm was first fortified in 1886 when the army arrived to construct a string of defences stretching across the estuary from Breandown to Lavernock Point in South Wales. And this was in response to a threat of invasion from France, an invasion that never actually came. However, the Victorians were going to be prepared, so they built a lot of structures around the building, primarily the handsome Victorian barracks. And they were built to house the soldiers billeted on the island. But today they are the Trust's visitor centre and they will be your base for the day. It's a place where you can leave anything you don't want to take around with you. You can stop and have your lunch there, a cup of tea, or maybe even a glass of local cider. There's also a souvenir counter where you can buy your island guide and essential, and postcards to impress your friends. There's also a postal service with the island's own unique stamps, which will carry your postcard across to the mainland. And yes, there are also modern flushing loos because we are civilised on Steepholm. Around the island, as you go around, you'll see a lot of evidence of the fortifications, a lot of old ironmongery hanging around, lying around, and it's there, and it's there for good. Until it actually rots away, it's just going to be there. There's several gun emplacements around on the cliff tops, and they all have 7-ton cannon lying either within the emplacement or fairly nearby. They are going to be staying there in perpetuity because they're too heavy to be moved off the island. People have tried and failed miserably, so they are here forever or there forever. At Steepholm North, which is the little gun emplacement that you're looking at, I hope, you can enjoy views of the Welsh coast and also down Channel. And if you sail west from Steepholm, due west, don't go diverting anywhere, the first land you'd reach would be Nova Scotia. People wonder why it's windy in Weston-super-Mare. There's absolutely nothing to stop the wind between Canada and here. So you can actually get up onto the summit from a number of little paths that branch off the perimeter path. And there you will find the ruins of a farmhouse, amongst other things. Throughout its history, many people have tried to eke out a living on Steepholm, although it would never have been easy. The soil is thin and fierce winds and storms that blast the island put pay to many an early lotus eater's dream. But they have tried. Some people were reasonably successful, but no farming goes on there now. I can't think that anything would grow awfully well, apart from our wonderful plants. As we go around back onto the perimeter path, you will come across numerous buildings. Here you can see a generator house, which was built to power the nearby searchlight posts, which cling precariously to the near vertical cliffs. With the exception of one post at the southern end of the island, all the remaining installations are inaccessible due to their dangerous locations. We have very sheer, steep cliffs and climbing, rambling around the cliffs is absolutely forbidden, because the first thing you would do is hit the water and probably be washed up in either Clevedon or Minehead. So it's you have to be very careful walking around the cliffs. Watch your footing. We come to a photo of some of the birds that we've got there. And it must be remembered that Steepholm is first and foremost a nature reserve and bird sanctuary. It's home to large colonies of gulls who nest on the island. They raise their young before leaving in July, early August. So if you're not a big fan of gulls, Steepholm's got thousands of them, then plan your trip either early season or the end of July onwards, and it's gull free. They just disappear, go elsewhere, mainly landfill sites in Gloucestershire, we understand. We have to remember that it is the gulls' home, though. The island does belong to them, and they're very well behaved, not like the ones that come to Weston and will pinch your lunch. They're very good. You can eat your picnic out of doors, and they won't bat an eyelid. They won't take any notice of you at all. But they might have an issue if you get too close to their offspring, and they are all claws and beak, and they will swoop and they will give you a good raking if they possibly can. I've been on the receiving end of that several times myself, and it's not pleasant. So I've told you about the peregrine falcons nest on Tower Rock. You can see them, you can hear them around the island. If you hear this very high piping call, you can be sure that it's a peregrine and he's up to no good. You look up and you see a dot right up in the sky. And if you watch, he'll turn and dive at speeds of up to 240 miles per hour, which makes him the fastest bird in the world. They wreak havoc amongst the gulls, but their very favourite dish is pigeon, and particularly racing pigeons. So when we get a few of those on the island, and well, we tend to keep quiet about it, really, if we find a dead racing pigeon. We've got at the east end of the island, at the north end of the island, very high cliffs facing South Wales. And this is where the cormorants breed. They're there from March, April, and then they go off inland. But you can often see them flying out to sea to fish. But Steepholm's real wild card is a large colony of muntjac deer that aren't supposed to be there. They don't really belong there, but they were moved out there. Just a few of them, 5 in fact, 50, not 50, yeah, it probably is 50 years actually. But there are 50 pairs on the island now. You will certainly hear them barking as they roam around the undergrowth. And if you are really lucky, you might see 1 or 2. As we haven't been visiting Steepholm for the last 18 months, they've obviously had the place to themselves, so they've enjoyed themselves running around and being out in the open without coming across any humans. So you stand a very good chance of seeing them. On your way back down in the evening, back down to the landing beach, you very often see beautiful North Atlantic grey seals. They're very inquisitive, and they will quite often come up onto the beach and look to see what you're doing. The boat comes along and he sees this big blue thing and he just wants to bob around and have a look at it and see what it's all about. And they also have used the landing beach to give birth to their young. So we've had some very nice moments with beautiful white fluffy seal cubs. I'm not going to tell you all about Steepholm, because if I do, you'll say, well, we know what's out there, we know what's going on, so we don't need to go. And that's not the idea. We'd like as many people as possible to go and visit this lovely place. It's a bird watcher's paradise, particularly in the migratory season when lots of rare birds come through, and also lots of your everyday garden birds. We get them in very large numbers. I haven't told you about our wonderful slow worms. Steepholm is actually in the Guinness Book of Records for having the longest slow worm in the country, I imagine. I don't know, it could be the world, who knows? And it's about 21 inches long, which is apparently is a good size, in fact, an award-winning size for a slow worm. So we'll just pop back down to the beach, hop on our boats and whiz back to Weston.